My wife told me to cook for myself after I worked a 14-hour shift. I think I'm finally seeing the truth about my marriage. Male, 32 here, married to my wife Linda, 29 for 3 years. She has 2 kids from her previous marriage, Ryan, 11, and Sophie, 8. I work as a field technician for a telecommunications company, which means long days and sometimes emergency calls that keep me out until 10-11 p.m. Let me give you some context first. When Linda and I started dating 5 years ago, things felt different. She was working full-time then as a marketing coordinator, and we'd split dinner costs, take turns cooking, the whole partnership thing. Her ex-husband had been pretty useless, never paid child support consistently, barely saw the kids. I stepped up because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. After we got married, Linda decided to scale back to freelance work so she could be more available for Ryan and Sophie. Made sense to me. They'd been through enough instability. I told her I could handle the finances while she got established working from home. Yesterday was one of those brutal days that remind me why I get paid well for this job. Equipment failure at 3 different cell towers across the county, and I spent 14 hours crawling through equipment rooms and climbing towers in 95-degree heat. Didn't finish until 10:15 p.m. I was completely drained when I finally got home. My uniform was soaked with sweat. My knees were scraped from crawling through tight spaces, and I hadn't eaten anything since my lunch break at noon. When I walked into the kitchen, I saw Linda cleaning up dinner dishes. The kids were already in their rooms. I opened the fridge looking for leftovers or something quick to heat up, but there wasn't anything. I asked Linda if there were any leftovers from dinner, and she didn't even look up from the dishes, just said, "You're an adult, cook for yourself." I stood there for a minute, not sure I heard her right. I asked what she meant, and she turned around with this annoyed expression. She said, "I made dinner for the kids at 6. You weren't here. I'm not running a restaurant where people can just show up whenever they want and expect food to be ready." I tried explaining that I'd been working since 6 a.m. and couldn't control when the emergency calls ended, but she just shrugged and said, "That's your choice. The kids and I have our routine." "My choice?" I asked. "You think I chose to work a 14-hour day?" She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "You chose that job. You chose to take the overtime. Don't expect me to rearrange my entire evening because you can't manage your schedule." I wanted to point out that my choice to work overtime is what pays for this house, for Ryan's soccer equipment, for Sophie's art supplies, for the car Linda drives. But I was too tired to fight. I ended up making a peanut butter sandwich and going to bed. But I can't stop thinking about how she said it. Not just the words, but the way she looked at me, like I was some random roommate asking for favors instead of her husband coming home from work. I pay the mortgage, utilities, car payments, and most of the groceries. Linda does freelance graphic design maybe 15 to 20 hours a week, bringing in about $800 or $1,000 a month. I've never complained about supporting the family because I thought that's what partners do. But lately I'm wondering if I'm actually her partner or just the guy who pays the bills while she lives her life with her kids. Don't get me wrong, I love Ryan and Sophie. They're great kids, and I've always tried to be a good stepfather. But sometimes I feel like I'm more of a convenient uncle than a family member. Last month, Linda's mom came to visit for a week. Every night at dinner, it was Linda, her mom, Ryan, and Sophie chatting about school, family gossip, weekend plans. I'd sit there eating, and occasionally someone would ask how work was, but mostly I felt like background noise. One evening, Linda's mom was showing photos from when Linda was the kid's age, and she said, "Look how much Sophie looks like you did at that age." Then she looked at me and said, "You can really see the family resemblance, can't you, David?" Like I was a neighbor admiring their family photos instead of someone who lives with them every day. Am I overreacting to this? Is it unreasonable to expect my wife to save me dinner after a long workday? Or at least treat me like she's glad to see me when I come home? I keep thinking about my parents' marriage. Dad worked construction, sometimes 12-hour days, and Mom always made sure there was a plate waiting for him. Not because she was his servant, but because she loved him and wanted to take care of him. That's what I thought marriage looked like. Edit. Wow, wasn't expecting this many responses. Someone asked about counseling. I actually brought that up about a year ago when I started feeling disconnected. Linda said we didn't need it and that I was creating problems that don't exist. Update 1. 1 week later, your comments really opened my eyes, especially the ones asking if this pattern happens in other areas. So I decided to test something. This past week, I changed my approach. Instead of asking Linda about dinner or hoping she'd include me in family plans, I started taking care of myself, exactly like she suggested. Monday, stopped at the grocery store on my way home and bought food just for me. Got some steaks, fancy pasta, good bread, stuff I usually skip because it's too expensive, even though I'm the one earning the money. Made myself a nice dinner without asking if anyone else wanted some. Linda was feeding the kids mac and cheese from a box and seemed confused when I walked past with my plate but didn't say anything. Tuesday, I was off work, so I made myself a real breakfast: eggs, bacon, toast, coffee. Usually I'd make enough for everyone, but this time I just cooked for one. When Linda came downstairs and saw me eating, she asked where hers was. I looked up from my plate and said, "You're an adult, cook for yourself." She gave me this shocked look like she couldn't believe I just said that, but didn't respond. Just grabbed a yogurt and went back upstairs. Wednesday, Linda mentioned she was taking the kids to see the new superhero movie that evening. In the past, I would have asked if I could join or suggested we make it a family night. This time I just said cool and made my own plans to grab dinner and drinks with my coworker Jake. Haven't hung out with Jake in months because I always felt guilty about not being home with the family. Turns out he's been wondering why I disappeared. When I got home around 9 p.m., Linda asked where I'd been with this edge in her voice. I told her I was out with Jake, and she said, "You didn't think to ask if we wanted to do something as a family tonight." I reminded her that she'd already made plans without asking me, and she got flustered and said that was different. Thursday, came home to find Ryan struggling with his math homework at the kitchen table. Linda was right there on her laptop, probably working on some design project. I usually help him, but when Ryan looked up and asked for help, I told him to ask his mom because she was available and I was tired from work. Linda looked up sharply and said, "I'm working." I said, "So was I all day." Ryan looked confused and Linda ended up helping him, but she shot me this angry look like I was being unreasonable. Friday was the breaking point. I came home early for once. Linda was making spaghetti for dinner, enough for 3 people. She saw me come in but didn't say anything about dinner, just kept stirring the sauce. So I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and sat down to eat it at the counter. Ryan asked why I wasn't eating spaghetti with them, and before I could answer, Linda snapped at me. "What's wrong with you this week? You're acting like you don't live here anymore." I looked at her calmly and said, "I'm just taking care of myself, starting with cooking for myself like you told me to." She got flustered and started saying that's not what she meant, that I was being ridiculous and taking things too far. I asked her to explain what she did mean then, and she couldn't give me a straight answer. Just kept saying I was being dramatic and making a point instead of communicating like an adult. "I tried communicating," I said. "Remember when I asked about dinner last Monday? You made it pretty clear that expecting basic consideration was unreasonable." Sophie looked confused by the tension, so I didn't push the conversation further that night. But I've been doing a lot of thinking since then. Linda has been perfectly fine with me taking care of myself when it comes to things she doesn't want to do, like making sure I'm fed or included in family activities. But the moment my independence affects her convenience, like when Ryan asked for homework help and I wasn't automatically available, suddenly I'm being unreasonable. I checked our joint bank account yesterday. In the past 3 months, Linda has spent $1,200 on clothes and entertainment for herself and the kids. Meanwhile, I can't remember the last time I bought myself anything that wasn't work-related. Last weekend, I realized I needed new work boots. I mentioned it to Linda and she said, "That's a work expense, right? Your company should pay for that." When I explained that they give us a yearly allowance that I'd already used on other safety equipment, she just shrugged and said, "Well, you'll figure it out." But when Sophie wanted that art easel, Linda didn't hesitate to use our joint account. When Ryan needed new soccer cleats, she bought the expensive ones without asking. Her hair appointment last month cost $180, and she didn't mention it until I saw the charge. I'm not angry about supporting my family financially. That's not the issue. The issue is that I'm apparently only a member of this family when it's time to pay for something. I love Ryan and Sophie. They're good kids and none of this is their fault. But I'm starting to realize that Linda has set up a household where she and her children are the family, and I'm just the guy who funds their life while occasionally being allowed to participate. I'm going to talk to a lawyer this week, not because I want a divorce, but because I need to understand what my options are. I can't keep living like a stranger in my own house. Edit. Someone asked if Linda contributes anything to the household besides her small income. She does handle most of the cleaning and manages the kids' schedules. But here's the thing. She was doing those same things when we were dating and she worked full-time. The only thing that changed when she cut back her work was that I became responsible for supporting her lifestyle financially. Update 2. 2 weeks later. I met with a divorce attorney last Monday. His name is Robert Larson, comes highly recommended, and he was very straightforward about my situation. Turns out that since Linda and I don't have kids together and she works, even part-time, I likely wouldn't be paying much in spousal support. The house is in my name since I bought it before we married, though she might be entitled to some equity from improvements made during marriage. I didn't file immediately. I wanted to try one more conversation first. Last Wednesday evening, I sat Linda down after the kids went to bed and explained how I'd been feeling. I told her that I felt like an outsider in my own home, that I didn't feel valued as a husband, and that I needed things to change if our marriage was going to work. I was calm and specific. I explained that it wasn't about any single incident, but about a pattern where I felt like I was valued for what I provided rather than who I was. I gave examples. The dinner situation, being excluded from family plans, feeling like my needs came last in every situation. Her response: she rolled her eyes and said I was being overly sensitive and that this is just how families work. Families work by treating one member like an ATM. I asked, "Don't be dramatic," she said. "You act like I'm some gold digger. I work, I take care of the house, I manage everything with the kids. Just because I don't worship the ground you walk on doesn't mean I don't appreciate you." When I pointed out that most wives don't tell their husbands to fend for themselves after a 14-hour workday, she said, "Most husbands don't expect their wives to be their personal servants." That wasn't what I was asking for, and I tried to explain that. I told her about my parents, about how they took care of each other, about how my mom would save Dad dinner not because she was his servant but because she loved him. But Linda just kept getting more defensive, saying I was trying to make her feel guilty for having boundaries, and that maybe I should appreciate everything she does do instead of focusing on what she doesn't. "Like what?" I asked. "What do you do that shows me you value me as your husband and not just as a provider?" She was quiet for a long moment thinking. Then she said, "I keep house. I make sure the kids are taken care of. I'm here when you come home." "You're here," I repeated. "Like furniture is here." "That's not fair," she said, but she looked uncomfortable. I asked her what she thought I brought to our marriage besides money. She was quiet for even longer this time, then said, "You're a good provider and you're decent with the kids." A good provider, that's it. That's how my wife sees me. I asked if she loved me or just loved what I provided. She got angry and said I was trying to manipulate her with gotcha questions. She said of course she loved me, but that love isn't just about feelings, it's about partnership and responsibility. "What partnership?" I asked. "Partners make decisions together. Partners consider each other's needs. Partners include each other in their lives. You make plans without me, spend money without discussing it, and treat my need for basic consideration like an unreasonable demand." She said I was twisting everything, that I was being unfair, that she couldn't win with me. but she never answered the question about whether she loved me or just what I provided. The conversation went on for another hour. I tried to get her to understand how isolated I felt, how being told to cook for myself after a brutal work day felt like a slap in the face. She kept insisting that I was overreacting, that all marriages have rough patches, that I was expecting too much. Finally, I asked her directly, if I lost my job tomorrow and couldn't find work for 6 months, would you still want to be married to me? She hesitated just long enough to give me my answer. I filed for divorce on Friday. She was served yesterday morning while I was at work. She called me screaming around 10 a.m., demanding to know what I thought I was doing. Said I was being selfish and cruel and abandoning her and the children. When I told her I'd tried to talk to her about this for months and she dismissed every concern, she said, "You never said you were thinking about divorce." "I shouldn't have had to," I replied. "I shouldn't have had to threaten divorce to get you to treat me like your husband." When I got home yesterday evening, she was crying and asking how I could do this to them. Ryan and Sophie were at her sister's house, so we could talk freely. She kept saying she didn't understand, that things weren't that bad, that I was throwing away our family over petty things like dinner. I stayed calm and told her exactly what I told the attorney. I'm not your husband in this house. I'm your financial backer, and I'm not living like that anymore. She kept crying and saying I was wrong, that she did love me, that I was breaking up the family over nothing. I told her if they were such petty things, she should have cared enough to fix them when I asked. "I can change," she said. "I can make dinner for you. I can include you more. Just don't do this." "Linda," I said, "you shouldn't have to force yourself to include your husband in your life. The fact that you think these are things you need to consciously do proves my point." She asked if there was anything she could do to fix this. I told her the time for that was months ago when I first started telling her how I felt. She made it clear then that she didn't think my feelings mattered enough to change anything. Now I'm making a change she can't ignore. Ryan and Sophie know something's wrong but not the details yet. I've been staying in the guest room and will probably move out this weekend. I found a decent apartment close to my work, month-to-month lease while the divorce is pending. Last night, Sophie knocked on the guest room door and asked if I was mad at her and Ryan. It broke my heart. I told her absolutely not, that grown-up problems sometimes happen but it has nothing to do with them. She asked if I was still going to help her with her science fair project next month, and I told her of course I would. The lawyer says this should be fairly straightforward since we don't have shared children or significant joint assets. Linda will need to find a place she can afford on her income, and the kids will adjust. They're resilient. I'm sad about how this turned out, especially for Ryan and Sophie. But I can't model for them that it's okay to accept being treated as less important than a bank account. Edit, for those asking about custody visitation with the stepkids, I've talked to my lawyer about this. Since I never legally adopted them, I don't have any automatic rights, but I plan to ask Linda if I can still be part of their lives in some way. I genuinely care about those kids. Linda has called me 6 times today asking to talk. I'm not ready for that conversation yet. I told her to communicate through the lawyers for now. My buddy Jake came over last night with beer and pizza. First time I've had a friend over in probably 2 years. Linda never explicitly said I couldn't, but she'd always find reasons why it wasn't a good time. The kids had homework. She had a headache. We needed to clean house. I realize now I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Final update. 6 weeks later, the divorce is progressing smoothly. Linda initially tried to claim she deserved half the house value, but her attorney apparently told her that wasn't realistic given our circumstances. We're settling on her getting about $15,000 for home improvements, which is fair. I keep the house, my retirement accounts, and my truck. She keeps her car and her freelance business equipment. She's moving in with her sister temporarily while she looks for her own place. Her sister lives in a good school district, so Ryan and Sophie won't have to switch schools mid-year. The kids seem to be handling it okay. Kids are more adaptable than we give them credit for. The biggest change has been how differently Linda treats me now. Once she realized I was serious about the divorce and nothing she said was changing my mind, she started acting like the wife I'd been hoping for. Making dinner for me, asking about my day, being affectionate, including me in conversations. It's almost funny, except it's too late. Last week she made my favorite meal and had it waiting when I got home from work. She asked about my day, even offered to rub my shoulders. 6 months ago, this would have meant everything to me. Now it just feels hollow because I know it's motivated by panic, not love. She asked me yesterday if this change in her behavior made any difference. I told her it proved that she was always capable of treating me like a husband. She just chose not to until there were consequences. I didn't realize, she said. I thought you knew I loved you. How would I know that? I asked. You never showed it in ways that mattered to me. She started crying and said she'd been taking me for granted, that she'd gotten too comfortable and forgot to show appreciation. I believe she's sincere about regretting her behavior, but it doesn't change anything. She had 3 years to figure this out. She only cares now because she's losing her financial security. I'm staying in my apartment even after the divorce is final. It's smaller than the house, but it feels like home in a way that place has stopped being a while ago. I cook dinner for myself every night, and I actually enjoy it. Nobody's treating it like an inconvenience that I need to eat. I can invite friends over without worrying about disturbing anyone. I can watch whatever I want on TV without being made to feel selfish for not prioritizing the kids' shows. Ryan texted me last week asking if I could help him with a science project. Linda allowed it, and we spent Saturday afternoon building a volcano model at my apartment. It was good to spend time with him, but it also confirmed something for me. I can still be a positive influence in their lives without being married to their mother. During our volcano building session, Ryan asked why I moved out. I kept it simple. Sometimes grown-ups realize they want different things, and it's better to live separately than to be unhappy together. Are you happier now? He asked. I thought about it honestly. Yeah, buddy, I am. Sophie visited yesterday to work on her science fair project about planets. We made a model of the solar system, and she chattered away about which planet she'd want to visit. It was easy and natural, no tension, no walking on eggshells, just enjoying time with a kid I care about. When Linda picked her up, she lingered at the door looking around my apartment. You seem lighter, she said. I feel lighter, I replied. I'm not dating yet, but I'm not ruling it out forever. I learned a lot about what I will and won't accept in a relationship. Next time I'll speak up earlier and leave sooner if nothing changes. I'll also look for someone who shows interest in me as a person, not just as a provider. Linda and I are civil now. We'll always be connected because of the kids, and that's fine. But I'm done trying to earn love from someone who never wanted to give it. She's working more hours now and talking about going back to school for something more stable. Apparently, losing a husband who pays most of your bills is good motivation to become more self-sufficient. Who knew? Last week, she asked if I thought she was a bad person. I told her no, I don't think she's bad. I think she got comfortable in a dynamic that worked for her and didn't want to examine whether it was fair to me. But intent doesn't change impact. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and support over the past couple months. This community helped me see that I wasn't asking for too much. I was just asking the wrong person.